Welcome back to the Red Zone podcast. We are just recording a day after UW men's basketball team first loss of the season. They lost last night to Providence, 63-58. A lot of things from the game. Good things, bad things. Jim, just get us started. What are some of the things that you, off the top of your head, thought about last night?
Well, first of all, just how much of a bummer it was when we were sitting there waiting for the game to start and Johnny Davis walks out in street clothes and then found out that he's got a bruised heel in his day-to-day. And I really wanted to see where this team was at in terms of measuring stick against a team that from another Power 6 conference. And you take the best player out of the lineup and you just don't have the ability to do that anymore. So that was the biggest bummer is I wanted to kind of see the team at full strength and see how they looked against a quality opponent. The other things two things that I thought coming this season that were going to be issues really showed up last night. And one is shooting. The other is post defense, and we can get into that more. But I think those are two areas that are going to be constant issues with this team, and were definitely last night.
Yeah, so I get to every game 2 hours early so I can see early warm-ups because, they warm up before fans get there, and then they warm up again closer to the game. And Johnny was shooting. I was more hung up on the fact that Jacoby Neath wasn't on the court, and I was like, Jacoby Neath's out. But, not that big of a deal. He was out the last game. The team could play without him. And Johnny Davis was shooting, so I was like, oh, okay. And then, when he walked out in street clothes. I mean, I went into the game thinking that Providence had the upper edge anyway, just with the fact that they had such a experienced roster. But I think if one of two things happen, or if both things happen, if Johnny Davis plays or if Chris Vogt and Stephen Crowell don't get fouls in the first half, it's a different game.
Yeah, it was really a game changer when Crowell picked up his second and with 9+ minutes left in the first half, and then Vogt has to come in and Vogt gets number 2 and number 3 really quickly. So then and with a lot of time left in the first half yet, I think there was 7+ minutes. So then Greg Gard's in almost an impossible position. Either you put Crowell back in and risk getting his third, where you have both of your centers with 3 fouls. He chose to let him sit, went with Ben Carlson at the 5, and Carlson was really no match for Watson. And then suddenly a lead that was 7 for Providence turned into double digits and ended up being too much for Wisconsin to come back from. I thought they did much better in the second half defending the post. I think Stephen Crowell did a good job. He's a battler. I don't think it's not a matter of effort or anything. It's just right now he's not physically ready to play some of these bigger centers. And Nate Watson is a really, really big and skilled center. The other thing I thought about Watson is not all of his points were coming right around the basket. There was a couple times where he had hooks from just outside the lane or just kind of soft turnaround jumpers. So, he's a force to deal with. And the good thing is it was that Wisconsin needed that. Wisconsin needed to see a guy like him because it's going to see a lot more guys like him.
Yeah, and Greg Gard said there were some of those perimeter shots, like you said, that you can't get hung up on about. Right. They're going to happen. But touching on a little bit of the stats, Watson was 7 for 10 in the first half and only 4 for 5 in the second. And in the first half, 7 of his points were with either Corral or Vogt on the court, and then it was 9 points without them. And I think there was a distinct shift in how the team played and how well Watson was guarded because, for better or worse, he still scored a lot, but I thought Stephen Crowell and Chris Vogt did a decent job shutting him down. I think that my favorite matchup of the night was when Chucky Hepburn was guarding Watson down low, and I was just like, yep, 6'2" and 6'10" right there. That's a great matchup. But what do you think this means going into the Big Ten? Because centers are such a huge part of Big Ten play.
Yeah, they're just going to have to battle and hope. The worst case scenario is what happened last night where guys got in foul trouble. I mean, you can play a little bit more physical if you're not in foul trouble. Certainly, if you're on the bench with foul trouble, that's a disaster. And that's what happened last night. They lost their 2 centers for a long, long stretch in the first half, and combine that with the fact that your best offensive player is not playing at all. It's just it was a recipe for disaster. I think they'll get better as the season goes on, too. I mean, the good news is they don't have to play the Kofi Coburns and Hunter Dickinsons until January. So Stephen Crowell has a lot of time to, just kind of get more experience and figure out some tricks of the trade on how to play better post defense. Again, I'll go back to it. He's a willing defender. He's not physically where he needs to be, and I think that's going to come with time over the next couple of seasons. So I'm not discouraged. I think I looked at that team last night. I'm like, they're in this game, despite everything that we just talked about. They're in this game at the end. To me, that is a encouraging sign just from a grittiness factor. I think this is a really gritty team. I think it's a team that likes each other and plays together. They're just going to have to find ways to some of these offensive droughts to make them less time, and just not you can't go 6 possessions or miss 9 of 10 shots. You can't do that multiple times in a game, and last night that's what happened.
Well, especially because they had made more shot attempts against Providence than they did in either of their early 2 games. They just weren't sinking. They weren't getting the good shots, and even some of their wide open shots weren't landing. So
one guy, I'll bring this up now. One guy I talked about in my 3 things last night was Ben Carlson. I thought he had a really rough night. Asking him to guard Nate Watson late in the first half it's a big ask, and he struggled there. But even early in the game, I wonder if this game goes different if he had some open looks. He had one in the paint and then back-to-back three-pointers, so three possessions in a row where he missed shots, where I wonder if the game goes different if he knocks one of those down, gets some confidence early. I just thought he wasn't himself. Sometimes with young guys, if they miss shots, it affects them on the other end of the court. Carlson's it was his first career start, 10th career game. I think much better things are ahead of him, but last night was not one of his better performances.
With everyone being young, everyone is so young, and you saw how that experience pays out, especially with Wall and Davison leading. Because, like you said, the younger guys were shut down. Chucky Hepburn was shut down. Ben Carlson was shut down. But I thought we've seen just pretty consistent numbers with Brad Davison, but this is the first time I really saw Tyler Wall step up. He had a career-high 16 points, 7 for 2, and 2 blocks. And his blocks were fun ones, too, because, you get blocks all the time. But, he had some really nice ones, and then his dunk, too. I thought Tyler Wall played phenomenal last night, and it just kind of makes it's on a sour note because the team couldn't pull out the win.
Yeah, there were a lot of people, grumbling about, the first 2 games, I think he had 7 points total, and that they were using that as a sign that he hadn't really improved much from last year. I think he's going to score when he needs to score. Last night they needed him to score, obviously, with Davis out. I thought he was pretty aggressive. He got the ball in some sweet spots in the paint and is crafty. He's a really crafty player, and he was able to do something with it. I thought he did his part. Davison did his part for the most part, forced things a little bit in the second half, but part of that is if he's not going to create shots, who's going to? So some of those shots have to be forced. So I thought those 2 played well. They just needed a little help. They needed one other guy to step up, and Krall was 1 of 10. I think Carlson was 1 of 7. You can't have those types of numbers in a game where your best offensive player is on the bench.
I think something that I saw in this game was I think this team is easily 10 people deep. Easily when Johnny and Jacoby are healthy. Yeah. Both of them have to be healthy. They played 8 deep, and I thought there were some really good minutes from someone who I wasn't expecting, Carter Gilmore. He's continuously impressed me this season. He may not be on the stat sheet nearly as much, but his defense is there. He's getting his teammates in good positions. I was impressed with Gilmore last night, too.
Yeah, very scrappy player. It can't be a guy that you count on a ton for scoring, but I think he's a guy that if the right pieces are around him, he can add a little bit. I'd like to see him hunt his shot a little bit more, and especially for a team that really is low on outside shooters. I think that's a part of the game that he can help you with. Again, I think Johnny Davis not being there changes the dynamic so much because Johnny's a guy that can get in the paint, create shot for himself, but also for others. If you've got Johnny penetrating and some shooters around him making open shots, I think that completely changes how this offense looks, and it's just such a big void without him in the lineup. I think Davis being there would help a guy like Gilmore even more.
And another thing is Brad Davison can't be playing 39 minutes every single game. I mean, Tyler Wall and Chucky Hepburn played 36 minutes in the game, which is fine. But again, you really don't want to be stretching those guys that you need to rely on for that long. I was impressed with the fact that Chucky Hepburn hung on for 36 minutes.
Well, and especially because Providence is trapping the entire game. So that adds even more of a toll to Hepburn and Davison in terms of they've got to get the ball up court without getting trapped, without turning the ball over. I just think that's a physical and mental toll that when you combine that with the added minutes they have to play, maybe explains a little bit why Brad Davison tired. I think Brad's even got tired at the end. And why Checky Hepburn wasn't maybe as aggressive as he could have been. He's a true freshman playing his third game, and that game is against a team that's really long, really aggressive, and he's trying to trap him into making mistakes.
They also had low turnovers. Only 7 in this game. They had 12 against St. Francis and 13 against Green Bay. And I think this game I expected that number to be higher. It's not a number I was keeping track of during the game, but I felt like there were a lot more than when I looked at the stat sheet.
Yeah, you know why? Is because some of those turnovers were live ball turnovers that led to, like Chris Volk, 2 of his 3 fouls were in transition and the result of turnovers. And that's, I agree with you. Like, I thought they did a great job. 6 turnovers is a really good number, especially against a team that's trying to trap you. But if you look at those 6 turnovers closely, they weren't where you're throwing the ball out of bounds and you can get back and set your defense. They were live ball turnovers, and that's really going to hurt you.
Do you think you took more good things or bad things away from last night's game?
Yeah, I think more good things. Again, I'll go back to the fact that it's so hard to measure a team without its best player, and I just thought the fact that they hung in there, really down 11 points at halftime, I wondered if it was going to get out of hand, and they battled back. So I'm encouraged. I think big picture-wise, I wonder if you're a team that's on the bubble in March, does this look like a bad luck? 'Cause I don't think this is going to be a Providence team that's going to be all that good. As good as Nate Watson is, I think some of those guards are really played selfish last night, and they could have fed him even more. I just think some of those guys took some shots that kind of had me scratching my head. So I don't know if this loss is going to look all that good in March. Now, the committee's probably going to take into account that, hey, they didn't have their best player that night. And maybe we never even get to a point where Wisconsin's in the discussion. I don't know. But I think that's, from a big picture standpoint, I wonder how much this loss kind of drags you down in the ratings, the Ken Poms and the other computer rankings, and when the NCAA comes out with its ratings in January, if this loss hurts. But you got to get to that point first, and I think there's a lot of things you can learn from this game. Like, that's the thing, is you can learn a lot from a loss.
Jordan Davis got that beautiful 3 right at the end that put him within 3 points, and I got nervous because I had such a tight deadline, and I was like, oh my God, are they going to come back with 2 seconds left? Because, stranger things have happened, right. But I thought it was a good game. In the end, I think, as much as we can't use it as a measuring stick because Johnny Davis didn't play, we can use it a little bit because it showed that they know how to rally without him. And that's my biggest takeaway, is that they can be deep-ish, essentially 4 guys out in the first half. So take it with a grain of salt, take it for a lot. I don't really know, but I think it showed more good things than bad things, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I just think, I've said this before, but there's going to be growing pains with this team. And last night we saw some growing pains in terms of offensively and defending the post. And I think it's a team that's going to get better with time, and we'll see that over the next month to 2 months.
Well, they've got could be a challenging slate heading into next week. They dropped down to 45 after being 43 in Ken Pom rankings. For reference, Providence is now at 69, so Wisconsin's still ranked higher. But they're heading to Vegas for the Maui Invitational next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And they open against Texas A&M, who is currently 3-0. They have 4 guys averaging in double digits. Again, not really decent or not really high-level teams that they're playing against. But what are you hoping to see in Vegas?
It's a pretty big game, I think. I mean, you never want to put too much emphasis on a game that's going to be played in mid-November or whatever. But I think if you lose to Texas A&M and fall into the loser's bracket, you cost yourself a chance to play probably Houston in the second round. And I think if you can win that game, play Houston, even if you lose that game to Houston, it's one of those that looks good. It's going to be, the computers are going to love that game, and certainly it's going to be another measuring stick, right? I mean, that's probably going to be, Houston's probably going to be the best non-conference game on the schedule unless they beat Houston, and it'd be Oregon possibly, right, in the final. So yeah, I just think you set yourself up for a chance to play better teams. So that's why I think, most tournaments, the first round game, it's not a lot of pizzazz to it, but I think that's a big one for Wisconsin. I think that's, go out there and win that game. Knock on wood, they'll be at full strength if they can win that, and then you set yourself up for, a pretty good measuring stick in the second round.
Henry Coleman is Texas A&M's leading shooter, 15.3 points, and he's a transfer from Duke. It's a younger team, sophomores and juniors. There's a couple grad students, but like you said, I think it's going to be a good tell. I think this might be our measuring stick game in a way. But yeah, then like you said, Houston, if they win, arguably, assuming Houston beats Butler, which I think it's safe to assume they will. Houston's 2-0. They play Virginia tonight. We're recording this Tuesday. They play it Tuesday. This will come out and the score will happen. So take that with what you will. They're an older team. They're 10th in KenPom, 15th in the AP poll. So it'd be the first ranked team if they can, assuming they stay in. And then, but no matter who they play, everyone except for Butler and Chaminade are ranked higher than them in KenPom. Butler's at 64, Oregon's 22 in KenPom, 12 in the AP poll, St. Mary's is 41 in KenPom, and Notre Dame is 30. So no matter what, they're playing challenging games that I think are going to help them prepare for Big Ten play. Are these teams as good as Big Ten teams? I'm not sure. I really don't know what the Big Ten is looking like so far this season. I mean, Illinois lost to Marquette last night. Not a lot of Big Ten teams have played those high-level games that we need to gauge. But I think this is going to be a good glimpse of what UW could be.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot more about Wisconsin next week. I think if they come out of there 2-1 somehow, some way, whether it's, I guess, losing their first game and coming out of the losers bracket and winning 2 games there, that's fine. I think you want to avoid going 1-2, and then because then you still have some losable games yet in non-conference play. I just don't want to dig yourself too big of a hole from a record standpoint heading into Big Ten play.
They should have Johnny Davis back, potentially Jacoby Neath, and I think that definitely helps things because then you don't have to rely on a little less experienced players like Carter Gilmore, Lauren Bowman too. He came off the bench last night, but I'm excited to see how they're able to handle these higher level teams back to back to back because that's what March is. It's back to back to back. And I think we're going to learn a lot. They're going to get a lot of experience. I'm personally hoping they at least win the first game because if they lose the first game, I've got some really late games and
deadline purposes would be better for Wisconsin to win.
Yes. So I'm hoping for a Texas A&M win. Whatever happens from there happens. I'd love to see them be competitive against Houston, competitive against Oregon, but that is all next week. We likely won't have an episode next week as I will be in Vegas and Jim will be in Wisconsin preparing for Minnesota football, playing Minnesota. So stay tuned. Make sure you're following us on Twitter because I'll update whatever's going on with podcasts because I'm not sure yet. But thanks so much for listening.